Hey guys, it's the Turtle here. With me is my good mate, the Chief.
Hey mate, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. So we are Noble Nine for all our newcomers. We are a shit talking channel with a splash of gameplay in the background to help you get you through your day. The first topic we want to touch on this week is AFL Trade Week. Chief, take it away, mate.
Yeah. The free agency period is wrapped up, and we're now into trade week proper as we move closer and closer to obviously draft time.
Mm-hmm.
So look, I'm going to start with my boys, the Saints, and they got the Crouch deal done. I'm actually really proud of them for that one, man, because we didn't give away the farm. I think Adelaide's going to get pick 23 compensation. I think for a player of his caliber, it's a pretty good deal with regards to the Saints side of the story. And man, I've got nothing but praise for the Saints recruitment and list management team over the last few years because we we certainly went through some dark days just 5 minutes ago, and we've come out the other end. And yeah, we're now in a really strong position with a really strong list. So I'm very happy with how that's gone. I have seen as well. I have inquired about Adam Treloar, but the president, Simon Leathan, have said obviously that probably won't happen because we don't have the room in the salary cap for him. Um, which I'm also very happy about because, as I think you want to talk about, there's a number of clubs that we go, you have a lot of really good players that deserve to be on a lot of good money. How the fuck do you afford this?
Yeah, you're exactly right, mate. What I admit though, what I'm surprised about is I honestly thought Adelaide would match the target that Saints offered to Brad Crouch because it's well within their salary cap, and as you said earlier, Crouch is a good player. I am I'm surprised that they're settling for pick 28 or whatever it is for him. I thought they would have tried to push you a little bit harder for that, but in the end, the player gets what he wants, which is, I think we put a pin in that one because I want to discuss that at a later date.
Sure.
But you're right. There are a lot of clubs that I just seriously wonder where they're getting their cash flow from. Geelong is a prime example of that. They've got 7 or 8 players that I can list off the top of my head comfortably that would have to be on 650, 700 plus, and yet they still want to bring in Cameron on a 900k deal.
Yeah. Not to mention legacy players that I can't imagine in the twilight of their careers would have taken big pay cuts. I mean, obviously Harry Taylor just retired, Albert's retired. Both of them would have been on decent pay packages too. So I
Mm-hmm.
think you can bump that number up from, I think you said about 6 or 7. I think you can bump that up to nearly 9 to 10 players that are all in that 600, $700,000 or north of that figure mark um,
Yeah,
per year. So I go, and the thing about it is they've been in that position for almost a decade now, if not longer.
oh, mate, they've been up at the pointy end of the ladder for the past 15 years.
Yeah. So how
Yeah,
if
how?
if everyone's working off the same figure, how is it that you have okay, yes, Geelong is a destination club in terms of success. I wouldn't call Geelong a destination city. Say the same as like Brisbane is or Gold Coast or something. Um,
No, absolutely not.
but there are other clubs that West Coast and Collingwood and Bulldogs that have all been in proper contention. Like why is Geelong sort of been able to do what? Why has Geelong been able to be the outlier?
Yeah, why do players go there when you're right? There are other clubs with more money, to offer these players. I would have thought that someone like a Melbourne or a Western Bulldogs, as you say, they'd have a hell of a lot more room in their cap than what Geelong does. And without a doubt, I imagine they would have inquired about a Jeremy Cameron, and they probably would have offered him 1.2 million a season.
Yeah, 100%.
And yet he's picked Geelong, but Geelong's on the down. All their stars. are at the not end of their career, but they're nearing the end of their career. They're closer to the end than the start.
Yeah, the problem with that though is they did just play in a losing premiership, which for 3/4 of that match, I think it's fair to say they were winning. Um,
Oh no, no, Richmond outplayed them for 3/4.
nah,
Well,
no, at
so
least
the
half.
last half, the
The
last
last half, the
half.
last half. All right, I'll concede the last half, but even
Yeah,
saying that, so they just played in a losing premiership in which they were in control, or more or less in control, for the first half of the game, and
yeah.
they would have probably the story would have been very different if Chris Scott had let his best player, Paddy Dangerfield, actually play in his fucking position as a midfielder, and not this mid forward experiment that
Well,
the competition's going through.
well, yeah, yeah. There's a whole host of reasons, I believe, as to why they're there. But I think I look at a player like Selwood, and he's been banged up over 320 games. He does not have long to go.
Yep, I'll cop that.
And even Dangerfield's been in the system for 14 years. He's
Yeah.
probably not as banged up as Selwood is, or whatnot, but he's not far behind him.
My only hesitation about this, or not hesitation, I should say, my only reservation about this is that we've had this argument before. Whether it's you and
Yeah.
I or it's other dudes, you've said it before. Geelong's been up there for 15 years. They've gone
Yeah.
through multiple list rotations, multiple list iterations, and they've maintained their top position. So I think, yeah, okay, dudes like, you're right, dudes like Selwood and Dangerfield, even dudes like Guthrie, um,
Hmm.
are getting past it now. Well, not getting past it, but there's a lot of rings. If you cut them open, there's a lot of rings on that tree.
Yeah.
Um, so you're right; they're probably on their way out in the next sort of 5 years at least. Um, but Geelong's talent and the Geelong's the reason why Geelong's been so successful is because they've managed to find time and time again replacement stars to top up their list. And Jeremy Cameron is an excellent example because um, well, it's going to increase Hawkins' longevity.
Yep.
Um, and I would say, although I wouldn't put Hawkins on the same tier as like a Selwood or a Dangerfield, and I wouldn't say he's close to the end. He's certainly closer than Jeremy Cameron is.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, that's their thoughts for another video. I think because we could. I think we could quite conceivably talk about that for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously address it again after the trade period
Hmm.
really takes hold, and we'll
Yep.
see where things sit.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to touch on some international news now. I mean, there's a particularly important event going on in US at the moment. So, Chief, it's the American election.
Yes.
There's a lot of stories coming out of this right now.
Yeah. And look, unfortunately, this is a case of it's a bit of a dichotomy because yesterday you would comfortably say Trump's on the path to re-election, um, and sort of everyone could breathe easy. Again, I make no bones about it. If I was an American citizen, would have voted for Trump in this election. Um, and I tell you what, I'm genuinely worried that he's not going to get up in this one. Um,
Hmm.
however, what I can tell you is that, so this is the benefit. I think I mentioned this before. This is the benefit of not sleeping much because I'm working nights a lot. You get to see news cycles repeat every 5 minutes, so you stay up to date. Um, what we're finding, man, is Trump was kicking Biden's ass up until about 4 o'clock in the morning American time, and then all of a sudden, all these votes from seemingly out of nowhere have just appeared, and all of them are for Biden in several key swing states, places like Wisconsin and Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, of course, Pennsylvania as well.
And they're typically Republican states, aren't they?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah.
So Wisconsin and Michigan both went for Trump in the 2016 election. Um,
Yep.
I think Arizona was Democrat, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Now the problem is this: since about 4 o'clock US time this morning, there has been several incidents of basically what you could describe or what looks to be some version of voter fraud. So, for example, you have instances where thousands of ballots just arrived in the back of a little delivery sort of van with a single dude who used a little like wooden cart. I shit you not, like a little Amish wooden cart that just had boxes of ballots. No security, no one around, dead of night. Escorted them into a voting centre. Again, never went through any security. Went straight into the big voting room they have, and no one looked at them. No one verified anything. They just went straight into the count. That's something. That's documented on video.
That's just cheating, flat out cheating.
Well, it gets worse. So, on top of this, in several Democratic-run voting stations, they're not
Yep.
allowing Republican observers to watch the count. Now, what that means is this: the term observer is actually an Australian term, so we have it here. So what happens is in all voting stations, you have essentially, say you're still using the two-party preferred system. So here to be Liberal and Labor, you have a Liberal person who will watch the count, and you have a Labor person that watches the count, so they can verify every single vote. Because
Yep.
you have to verify, okay, is it properly filled out? Is it, all the details are correct, da 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 da, so you don't have fraudulent votes.
Yeah.
Now the problem is that just the way it is in the US, the majority of the people that run these voting centers are Democrats. It seems to be just always the way it is. They are refusing entry to Republican observers. They have their own word for it, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah. that should just be not on. And as soon as that happens, that needs to stop.
Yeah. Like I think in some of them, and this is in these key states, the Wisconsins, the Michigans, the Nevadas, the Pennsylvanias.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing Democrats considered, they said, okay, the observers can come in, but they have to be at least 20 feet away from the process. I don't know about you, man, but like I'm 27, my eyesight's pretty much perfect. I cannot read a little piece of fucking paper from 20 feet away when I've got to check on signatures and stamps and all that sort of other stuff, right? Now, further to that, there's also another fucking interesting thing. So, again, in these Democratic-run voting centres, do you remember? So, in the US, their voting cards are very similar to our sort of exam cards. You know, like the ones you use on the Scannatron, and you got to use a little, A2 pencil and fill the circle in.
Yep.
So their ones are pretty much exactly like that. What's happening
Okay.
is in those cities or in those counties, they're giving voters Sharpie pens to fill in those pieces of paper. If you use a Sharpie pen, the Scannatron machine cannot register that vote, so your vote doesn't get counted.
Right.
Now there are pens and pencils there, but there are several anecdotal examples that people are coming in and reporting to conservative news channels, particularly YouTube channels, where stories of, I picked up a pen and an official came and said, oh no, those are dirty pens, put it away, and were given a Sharpie instead. Or what would happen was people would come along, pull out a pen from their pocket, and the official would go, no, I'm sorry, sir, because of COVID, you have to use what we provide you, and would give them a Sharpie.
What a load of shit that is, eh? What a load of shit.
Yeah. So I go, all right, from 4 o'clock this morning, Trump was kicking his ass. Then from 4 o'clock this morning, we have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of votes, all for Biden. We have at least 3 or 4 examples of very suspicious activity across multiple different counties and cities or whatnot. And all of it is in favour of Biden.
Mate, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but there's something sus there.
Mate, where there is smoke, there is fire. And I tell you what, that smells like a fucking bushfire to me.
Exactly right, mate. That is a fucking wildfire.
Yeah. So this is why Trump is just or is in the process of launching multiple lawsuits. I think he's currently got 4 or 5 planned. Again, in those states that I've mentioned before, and he is well within his right, I think, to file those lawsuits and to take this to the Supreme Court, because he's warned about this the whole time. The entire campaign, the Conservatives have warned about this, that this is what you're going to get. You're going to get essentially a country frozen because they do not know who their commander-in-chief is, because they cannot verify and be sure of the veracity of their election process.
Yeah. It's a divided nation at the moment, that one.
Well, it's a divided nation, and it's more than that, because there's no beat around the bush. The United States is the most powerful and the most important country at this point in time in history. You cannot have it this divided, and you cannot have it this uncertain.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Mate, there'll be fuck all news out of the rest of the world right now, I guarantee you, because everyone from Xi Jinping to Putin to Angela Merkel to Boris Johnson, everyone is just like you and me, is sitting there, heads in their phones, constantly just waiting to hear the result. And what doesn't fucking help is, I saw this before, is places like bloody Sportsbet, which I usually think is quite funny, paying out on Biden now. What are you fuckers talking about? This will go through to December.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, people are in it to make a quick buck. They don't actually care about the result or what actually happens.
Yeah. But yeah, that Sportsbet thing's one. I mean, there's also, we can get into the sort of media stuff. I think we will in another episode, one of our specials, I think, which perhaps might even be next week or the week after.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I tell you what, this is a little gem for it. If you notice, the media is extremely quick to call states for Biden, and they will drag out as long as possible calling a state for Trump.
Yep. Yep.
The example I provide is the state of Arizona has been called and retracted 5 or 6 times in the space of the last 12 hours.
Yeah, right.
Whereas, and this is when, like, the margin has been less than 1.5 points, right? So it's very close in Biden's favor, but it's been very close with still votes to count. Whereas you compare that to Alaska, where Trump leads and has led by 30 fucking points the entire time.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you call Arizona, which is still a toss-up even today, and yet you leave Alaska uncalled? I'll tell you why. I know I'm going on a bit of a fucking rant here, right? But this has turned into a grind my gears. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
It's because it's in the media's, like, if Trump wins, the losers are the media. The losers are the left, right? And if they propose to say Trump is winning A, B, C, D, it works in their favor, because unfortunately in the US, because their electoral system is fucking stupid, you can still vote days after the election. So there is still campaigning to do.
And that's the idiocy of that country, isn't it?
Oh, I do not understand how in the most important democracy in the world, which actually, fun fact, America isn't a democracy, it's a republic, which is a different thing. But, in a country that supposedly has the most important democracy in the world, how the fuck did they not have a governing body like we have in Australia, the AEC, to take care of their fucking elections?
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, mate, it's beyond me. It's beyond me.
Like, you see, it's the fucking thing's left up to the states. We see the difference in competency between, say, Florida, who had a huge state, right? Who had several absentee ballots, several hundreds of thousands, I should say, mail-in ballots, as well as day of ballots. They had that shit done by the night of. Fantastic. Well done. Whereas a state like Pennsylvania, which is not as big as fucking Florida, is going to be potentially end of the week.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of these states need to stop living in the fucking stone ages. They need to get with the times.
Oh, mate, I tell you what.
Particularly for a decision as important as this.
Well, it's not as if they weren't aware of it and didn't have any notice.
Well, hang on a minute. This might seem like a crazy solution, but wouldn't you think in 4 years' time they'd come up with something better?
Well, they didn't last time. They didn't the time before that. They didn't the time before that. So I tell you what, I reckon the exact same people that have worked on Victoria's contract tracing system have worked on their fucking electoral system.
Yeah, wow. Fucking peanuts, aren't they?
They must work in cave. They must work in cave drawings. That's why you see so much graffiti there. That's how they communicate. They just get their version. Black Lives Matter goes around the corner of the electoral building and just starts writing up. Oh yeah, Biden fucking 230 electoral votes and Trump 214, and they just use the whole wall. They work from left to right, and they use the wall as their marker board. And they TikTok it. That's it. They put it on TikTok and go, oh yeah, we're tracking it 30 seconds at a time, or however long TikToks are. Fucking idiots.
Well, I think viewers, we've had our grind our gears session right there. Why don't we get into a more interesting topic, mate, and we'll take up where we left off from last week.
Sure, go for it, man. If you want to introduce this one.
Yeah, so throughout the week, guys, we thought that last episode was one of our better ones, if not our best. And the last 20 minutes, we actually both quite enjoyed the discussion. So what we're thinking of life education. Should it come from schools or should it come from your family and your home life? So I actually believe that the skills you learn from your family are the keys to being successful. And I think school is a great place to learn the social aspect of life, but I think the foundations that your parents set when you're very little are what help you build your career and build your life. Chief, what's your thoughts?
So I'm going to disagree with you here, man.
Okay.
Which is good. Conflict breeds drama, which is good for YouTube channels.
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree with you. I agree with you in the sense values and morals and whatnot are built from your family and from your parents, your friends. The whole theory that you are essentially an amalgamation of the 5 people closest to you. 100%. In terms of where you get your social development, yes, school is an excellent place to do that. In fact, I would say that school should be the primary source of that social education.
Well, Well, it's the only place, isn't it, for your early development until you really start playing sport or you start picking up your hobbies.
Well, see, this is an important distinction. So when I talk about education, I'm not just talking up to primary school. I'm talking like from the moment you start schooling, so prep, all up into the
Hmm.
way that you effectively graduate and you become an adult.
Yep.
Because that's effectively your education as a child. That's your time to learn. Prior to that, yes, you can go and further your studies and whatnot and learn a speciality. But in terms of a life education, if we're talking about the education of life and how to live in the modern world, then yes, I believe your education stems from the moment you start. Well, no, it starts on the day you're born and ceases or pauses or evolves into a different stage the moment that you graduate high school. So it's important that we make that distinction.
Yep. Yep.
With that said, then I would say, yeah, again, yeah, socially, you learn that from school, but then you do extend that further with stuff like you brought up sports. So obviously, Australia, a very sporty nation. Kids will play footy, whether it's rugby or AFL, cricket in the summer, or it's just any sport. Um, that's a massive social education tool. But what I was concerned with last week is the more pragmatic education. Um,
Right.
so teaching kids stuff about the economy, teaching kids stuff about history, modern history, teaching kids, um, teaching kids stuff about the little proclivities, the little administrative processes that assist you in life, particularly in your country. That I feel should be taught in schools. The reason being for that is because it provides a standardized level of education for everyone with regards to that skill set and that field of knowledge. The reason why I don't think it should be done by the parents is because there's no guarantee the parents know what they're fucking talking about. Um,
But isn't it the parents' job as the primary educators right from the beginning, to know about these issues? You know, people are meant to succeed their parents as
yep,
they get older
yep.
and grow up. You know, so shouldn't it be in the parents' best interests to to learn about these things and teach them that at a younger age?
It is in the child's best interest, and I'm sure that the majority of parents do everything they can. But again, parents are not subject matter experts. Far from it. If you think about this, right? So in school, mathematics is an absolute given. You will learn mathematics in your primary education and secondary education, right?
Yep.
Now, you as a parent, you pay for your child to learn that because you've deemed it, the country's deemed it as such an important area of knowledge that you have to pay a subject matter expert to impart that knowledge to your child for them to get to an acceptable standard to enter the world, essentially.
Yep.
Now, I would argue that areas of knowledge like the economy and like modern history, like our legal system, like our constitution, they're all equally as important as mathematics, and therefore they all require subject matter experts. Um, Now, on top of that, I would go, well, a lot of those subjects, right? So take modern history, or well, let's just take modern history, right? That could be subject to the parents' ideology. The
Well,
parents could view modern history in such a skewed and biased way. They're just teaching their kid rubbish, and it's not true. So therefore, you haven't educated your child. You've made them worse off. Whereas if you introduce that as part of a national curriculum, then you can have essentially multiple sides of the ideological spectrum all having an input in the curriculum and saying, no, can we actually, remove the bullshit? This is what happened. The left can agree this is what happened, the right can agree this is what happened, and that's what you teach the children. So that what happens is that when everyone graduates, everyone is talking and starting from the same position. So we have a common language. and we have common ground from which we can then have diverging ideas, and arguments and debates in a civilized manner. I think part of the problem of society now is that we cannot even speak a common language, and we can't find common ground with which to start from, because these really important topics aren't being covered in a standardized manner. And I've unfortunately been left to parents, and I'm not having a go at parents. I think parents are the most important teachers in a child's life by far and away, hands down, no competition. But they are not subject matter experts on everything.
No, no. And I think to reach that point where you say we have a common language, society in itself needs to overcome a hell of a lot of issues. You bring up modern history. Well, yeah, you can bring that up and whatnot, but it goes further. Ancient history as well. There are, like the ancient Romans, they conquered such and such, and the Greeks, they conquered such and such, and whatnot. But the thing is, there's two different ideologies there. There always has been, and there always will be. And I don't foresee any chance of us having that common language.
See, that to me is worrisome because, like, you're a sort of a centre right leaning guy, right? You're a pragmatist, I like to think.
Yep.
You don't lean to the extremes, and yet basically what you've just said is it is impossible for humanity to find common ground and move forward. You've just said
But it
effectively
is.
we're going to be mired in our ideological differences and be fucked by it for the end of time.
But it is though. Like, what are we going to do? All right. So how are you going to get the far left to meet with the far right and say, rightio, let's sit down and let's nut this out properly and create a level playing field without any prejudice, without anything going on? They're just not going to do that.
I don't care about the far left and right.
Right? The medium left, the medium right, the short left, the short right.
Sure. Simple. Present them with the truth. And
Yeah, but
and
what's the truth? Because then you're looking at people's different perceptions on truth. Just because you believe the Saints are the best side in the AFL doesn't mean I believe that, and you're never going to convince me of that.
well, I can, depending on how we qualify that and quantify that. If talk, okay, use that example. Oh, Saints are the best team in the AFL. They're not. By no way they're the best team in the AFL. Um, well, I think Carlton still has the most premierships, don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, so I mean, you could go off premierships, but then you can introduce arguments like, well, they used to be the best team, but now they're far from it. That's also a fair argument too. So the problem there is you have to find an agreeable level of quantification. You have to have some way of measurement. Now,
well, yeah, but I don't. Honestly, I can't see that happening.
well, it
I
depends on
think
the
there's too
subject, mate.
much, but there's so much murky water in everything that you're not gonna see clear waters anymore.
But okay, think about the consequences for not trying.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we shouldn't try, because I believe we should try. We need to. But I'm trying to get put myself into a position just in this discussion where, like, I'm trying to question you. Do you
Yep.
know what I mean?
Oh no, you're playing devil's advocate, and that's absolutely fine. That's the purpose of these conversations.
Yeah, yeah. That's the saying. I couldn't remember that. Um, but there's so much murky water in history, in politics, in whatever. You could throw a dart at a wall and come up with murkiness.
Mm. Oh, you absolutely could, but that doesn't mean that we have to we stop trying. because the consequences of continuing down the path we are as a species, no question about it, will lead to our own extinction.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, because if we agree, what killed the dinosaurs? A big fucking asteroid come and hit them. Big
Hmm.
rock hit them on the head and they all died. All right.
Yep.
So what happens when we have that sort of extinction level event occur, and we're all fragmented and divided, and we can't agree on a some sort of countermeasure and some sort of protection against it, and we can't unite? We're going to die. Now,
Yep.
the fact of the matter is, we have a gift that no other species has, at least on this planet, and that's the gift of intelligence. There's a reason why we're the apex predator, and it's not because we're bigger, better, stronger, faster. No, it's because we're fucking smarter. We,
Except for cats, they
except
will
for
rule the world
oh,
one day.
they'll survive the big rock. I tell you what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think dogs will too, just because you know everyone loves a dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you what though, my bloody dogs won't. They would just try and go and lick the fucking asteroid, just try and destroy it with love.
uh,
Anyway, but my point is this: that if we don't try and find some sort of common ground with the centre left, centre right, because as I said, the people on the extremes are an absolute lost cause.
yeah.
They'll never um, they'll never be able to find common ground. So they're a waste of time. So you only really have to market yourself and prove commonality and prove what is true to that middle group, which is fine. But if we don't try, then honestly, mate, what's the point of life? What's the point of of being subservient to authority? What's the point of following police directions? What's the point of following road rules? What's the point of listening to directives from Scott Morrison, from Donald Trump, from Joe Biden? If you are doomed, what's the fucking point of not doing everything you want to do all day long, every day, until the day you die?
Oh yeah. I mean, it would lead to complete anarchy, wouldn't it?
It would, but if we know we're doomed regardless, because we're incapable of uniting and we're incapable of acting as a single species, and we're incapable of using the gift of rationality and thought that we've been given or evolved with, then we're just delaying that fucking anarchy and that chaos. We may as well get the party started now.
Well, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. But what I want to ask with regards to that common ground, or that middle ground that you spoke of, what happens if that does get found, and there is um, a prosperous future for us, but then the far left and the far right, not not joining forces or anything like that, but then they're the majority.
Well,
Yeah.
by that definition though, then they wouldn't be the majority because you can't have the extremes of the spectrum being the majority. Like they wouldn't then be the far right, far left. They would be the left or the right or the centres.
Hmm. Yeah. Look, mate, I think a common ground is what we need right now. I think both spectrums of the scale have gone too far, um, and that we need to start communicating, but not just communicating about mindless things, using common sense, as you say, building that middle ground for us as a species to progress and be the dominant force that we have been for the past 10,000 years.
Oh, I completely agree. Again, the question to sort of bring us back around to the original question. I do believe that starts with education and knowledge, because knowledge is truth. And if we can devise a system whereby everyone who enters, say, a public school system in Australia, um, receives the same level of education, the same exposure to the same level of knowledge in a public school system. So, obviously tertiary is something else entirely,
Yep.
but in a public school system, then I will think you will find it far easier to have that common ground. You will then also, mind you, create equality of opportunity. That, I think, will also contribute far more to achieving that common ground, because far less people will feel disenfranchised. If you understand that the system is not rigged against you, or even if it is rigged against you, if you know why and how the system is rigged against you, you can work that in your favour, perhaps, or work around it.
Yeah, you can turn it around.
Yeah, then you have opportunities and you have options, and you can choose to go left and right in your life. Um, that, I think, will lead to far less tensions between people, because people won't feel as if they've been unjustly or harshly done by in life, because they'll understand, like the ones and zeros of it, they'll understand that shit.
Yeah.
So I know
Yeah.
I'm stretching, I'm leaping a little bit, but I really think something as basic as removing your bullshit socialist uh, units from your curriculums and reintroducing topics like your nation's economy, history, including modern history. You're right to correct me and say, "Oh, we should include stuff like ancient history, BC and 1801." Yes, that's correct too. But I do think we need an accurate account of at least the last 100 years,
Yeah.
um,
Yep. Agreed.
as well as a few other things. I do also think that including your country's lessons about your country's constitutions, if you have one, and your legal system, is incredibly important too, because those are vitally important areas that people just do not understand and get shitty at, when the system does exactly what the system is written and says it's going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's one big I actually think there's one other huge topic in this, or sorry, not yeah, well, I think topic's the right word. Um, but that's religion.
Yeah, that's you know what.
And that is a key flaw in wanting an equal society, as far as I'm aware.
Do you know what, man? I used to think that exactly too. I used to think there's no place for religion. I'm not religious at all. Um, I'm not going to speak for you. But
I'm not religious either, and you're right. I think there is certain aspects of religion that are relevant in today's society, but some of the extremists you have to wonder about.
the extremists for sure. They're just, mate, put them in gas chambers for all I care. Um,
Yeah,
but no, I actually do think there is a significant place for religion in society, and I think it's actually making a bit of a comeback. And I don't mind it, again, despite the fact I'm not religious at all. But I do think there is a place for it, but that is definitely a longer conversation. So we'll put a pin in that. We might look into it next week or the week after. Depends what happens with the election.
yeah. Sounds like a plan, mate. Sounds like a plan.
That's it. All right. Well, it's been a long one. I'm liking these longer formats, mate. I'm liking the longer conversations, and I think we'll stick to it for a little while.
Yeah, just before we wrap up here, guys. Next week we will be doing a much longer video and podcast style episode with a special guest. So look forward to that. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the bell notification, and all that sort of jazz. And yeah, I'm the turtle. Peace out.
Cheers, guys. Catch you next week.